My first advice is keep your head in the kitchen. As I've explained, I've had to learn that twice now, and I'll never forget it because the second one is costing me more than $100,000.
Yo, what is up, everybody? My name is Matt Drouin. I'm the host of the Go Big Live Real Estate Investors Podcast, the show to listen to and to watch if you are a real estate investor, maybe experienced in buying a couple duplexes, a couple single family houses, really want to scale up into doing larger commercial deals. I am psyched out of my mind today to have a special guest on, Mr. Joe Downs, who's founder of the Belrose Group. And we're going to talk today about self-storage, a hot topic that's been in the industry, especially since regulations have changed in northeastern states as it pertains to residential. Even if you aren't interested in self-storage, there's always little nuggets you can carve out and apply to whatever commercial asset class you're focused on, whether it's multifamily, office, retail, or whatever. So be sure to stay tuned through the end because we're going to launch into not only listening about Joe's origin story as a real estate investor, but also all the things that he's learned as an operator and scaling into his first larger self-storage deal at the time. A little bit about Joe is that he is a lifelong entrepreneur with ventures across securities, mortgage, hospitality, and real estate. As co-founder of the Belrose Group, he focuses on niche opportunities in the self-storage sector, leading the firm's growth from acquisitions to development and consulting. Known for spotting the niches within niches, Joe dives deep into lesser-known industries and eagerly shares his insights. As CEO, Joe embodies servant leadership, fosters a collaborative and innovative culture at Belrose. A Philadelphia native, he now lives just outside the city with his wife, Dina, and their 3 children. He's passionate about helping others achieve their goals and regularly speaks at the Self Storage Academy and Mastermind as an expert in the field. Thanks for coming on the show, Joe. I appreciate it.
And go Birds.
I was like, are they now, guys, I'm a Star Wars, Star Trek fan. Never got into spectator sports. So who's the dirty birds? Those aren't your birds, right?
They are, yeah. Well, no. I think the Atlanta Falcons are the Dirty Birds. Yeah.
I don't know. Or the Seahawks.
I think we've been called. I think our fans have been called that too. I'm not really sure.
All right, somebody look up in ChatGPT and give us the answer. We'll give you some brownie points.
Atlanta Falcons were the Dirty Birds. There was an era of that, but whatever.
So, anyways, Joe, you were
Yes.
born. Now you're here. What happened in between?
Not much. I was born and now I'm here. So I'm one of 12. And maybe that's why I'm an entrepreneur, because you kind of, when you're younger, you had to learn to fend for yourself. Not so much. I mean, there's always food, but, you had to fight for it a little bit. But and actually, because you're one of 12, and my dad was in the military, so we moved around a lot. Excuse me, he was in the Army. So I was an Army brat. And my parents didn't have a lot of money either, so we kind of had to fend for ourselves. And I've actually, it's funny, the way you asked that question, it's making me realize I guess I was or am a lifelong entrepreneur. I always tell the story that I really didn't become one until later. But now that I'm remembering, I caddied as a kid to pay for my high school, went to an all-boys private high school in Philadelphia, St. Joe's Prep. And I caddied in the summers to pay for it because my parents could afford it, paid for my own college. And was always the one, selling that this is stupid, but you put this in my head and you gave me the carte blanche for in between birth and now. So I blame you. But I was always like the guy who was, the leading sales guy for like the grade school plays where you had the ad book, right, to help offset the cost of plays. So I was always the leading sales guy there. So I guess I have been an entrepreneur my whole life. So after college, I got a job. I would like to say Fortune 500. We weren't. We were a startup tech company, but it was like a corporate job. We were going public and we were getting rich until we weren't. And then I left there, got a job because the company was going under. My friend said, "Hey, American Express Financial Advisors is looking for financial advisors." I don't know the first thing about that, but let's do it. I majored in finance in college, so let's go. And so they were offering to train you and base salary or draw, whatever it was. And it sounded like a great career. So we did that, really learned how to be a glorified life insurance salesman, but life and life, accident, health, disability, whatever, and sold financial plans. And then I left there, went to Prudential Securities. Now you're a stockbroker or whatever. And I thought that was going to be my career, but I really wasn't having fun in it. I was just felt like I was treading water, and it was entrepreneurial because you were going out and getting your own clients. But everything, I lived through a couple crashes, and in particular, 9/11 was a defining moment in my life. Not because I was in New York, not because I lost like family member. And we all knew people, but nobody that close to me. So it wasn't that. It was more from a business standpoint that everything I was taught to do and trained to do didn't matter. There's an event that just didn't. It just shook the world and shook me and shook my. I was like, what am I doing here? This thing is a casino, and I was kind of already feeling that way. And then that was kind of the end of it for me. And I think within a year, I was always bartending, by the way. So I always had two jobs or three jobs. I've always been. And so I was bartending at this bar, and they were getting shut down. Long story short, there was an opportunity to buy it and convert it into kind of a college bar, into more of like a pub. And so we did that. I raised some money, put a deal together, did that. And in the green room, you said, I want you to tell about a life lesson you learned along the way before getting here. And I can either do it now or later. But owning a bar, which seems like every what was I 30 years old, it's like every 30-year-old guy's dream. Like that's in our DNA to own a bar, right? And it was the front of the house, the bar part I had down. It was great. We were making money. It was the kitchen, the restaurant part that took me under. It just killed me. And the life lesson there was, I didn't know what I was doing, but in a kitchen, I was letting the chef run it. He wasn't vested in it. So basically, he was outsourcing the management of where most of the cost center was. And it just, the revenue wasn't there. The expenses were just growing and growing and growing. We couldn't meet the revenue. And I think we made it a year. If I didn't, it was 11 months and change. And before I didn't file bankruptcy, but I handed the keys back over to, there were some private lenders. I just handed the keys back over to them, and lost money for sure. Lost money temporarily for friends and family, but ended up, I made promises to them that I'd pay them back, and I did over the years. Um, and the lesson was, you have to operate. You really have to be an operator. I look at it. I think I lost over 100 grand, but I look at it like like that was an education. It was, I didn't learn that much in college, and that cost more, right? So um, I don't look back on it as a a black mark in my life. I look back on it as the opportunity where I really learned a lot. Asterisks on that because I kind of made the similar mistake in a different way later. But it was at the time it felt awful, right? You feel disgusting. You feel like you're worthless. You feel gross. It was pretty depressing. I'm not a depressed guy by nature, and that was a it felt like a dark moment in my life. Um, Rebounded, got a job, and at selling radio, but literally for Fortune 500. CBS Radio was a talk radio station in Philadelphia, a conservative talk radio station. Have you ever seen the movie City Slickers with Billy Crystal? He says, "I sell air." That's what I did. I sold air. But little did I know, and that was just like a rebound for me, right? Little did I know that would lead me into my real estate journey. So I always wanted to be in real estate. The two wealthiest people that I knew in my life, meaning I knew them. I'm not talking Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. I'm talking local people that I'm in their cell phone. If I call them, they say hi, Joe. They were both in real estate. One was a developer. One is one on multifamily. And I always wanted to be in real estate, but never really had a foray. My parents weren't really entrepreneurs or business people, and so I never had any guidance or direction. But one of my clients at the radio station was a mentoring company called Real Estate Riches, and they were selling mentorships, teaching people how to buy single family homes and rent them or flip them, et cetera. So ended up going through their course and just started doing that. So now I'm working radio, still bartending at night, and I'm out on the weekends looking for houses, right, to buy. buy and flip. And I always call it like the real estate progression. So I started wholesaling and then and I had a partner. So wholesaling and single family rentals and flips, or I don't know which came first, but you went through that progression. Then my next client, I didn't only have two clients at the radio station, but I had two real estate clients. The next one was actually a developer, and they had developed this high end, like 55 plus apartment complex in right outside of the city, and they were advertising the units for sale on the radio. And I got friendly with the head of the sales, and he said, "I got a buddy who could use some of the like you. He's doing 1031 exchanges." So I went and interviewed for that job. Ended up becoming the national sales director for this company. Raised $93 million over the next couple of years in all his 1031 exchanges into multifamily, office, and a little bit of hotel. And so now I have this commercial real estate working knowledge. Not an expert, not I didn't find them. I didn't do. I was the sales guy, but you learn enough to get dangerous. And then in 2008, the really seven, but in eight, the credit markets hemorrhage, if you remember, and that was the beginning of the real estate meltdown, mortgage meltdown. So I had to reinvent again. And this is where I was realizing, hey, you're an entrepreneur. I ended up meeting who then became a partner and still is in a company at a tax lien seminar because I'm trying to figure out what to do next. By this time, I'm married. My wife does very well, thank God. She carried me the first couple of years there, and so we started. Anyway, my partner Tom started saying, or told me about a distressed mortgage note he bought. Second mortgage paying, and the yield was 25%. I was like, "What? I just raised 90 something $1 million at 6.5%, 7% was gold, right?" And here he is at 25%. I'm like, this can't be right. So I went to the seminar on that, learned about it, and was like, "Oh," I came back and said, "Tom, if these guys are selling you 25% yields, what's their yield? 50, 100? So there's something to this. There's a lot of margin here. We can make a business out of this." So we did that. 15 years later, we still own and operate that company, U.S. Mortgage Resolution. We just have one guy run it for us. But I had to reinvent again because there was a period of a couple of years there where the bank stopped selling the debt because it was too onerous for them. So that's when I got an email about self-storage and said, "What is this? This is interesting." It was a marketing email. I'm a curious person, and that's what I tell people: like, be curious, look into things. And I'm curious. I've learned about myself because distressed second mortgages, people told us we were insanely stupid and nuts. And we're now one of the largest buyers of that particular product in the country, which is to say the world's, or we're the largest fish in the world's smallest pond. So, it's not a big deal. But what I learned is that I am curious and I like to learn about things that people, will tell you openly, whether you ask for their opinion or not, tell you how stupid and crazy you are for even looking into it. So that's how I approach storage. And the it wasn't the original marketing email that caught my attention because that was actually BS. It was no toilets, tenants, and trash. And you have tenants in storage, and sometimes they leave trash. So it was kind of, I'm sure it was to get my attention, which it worked. But really, the interesting niche for me, and this is what I loved about it, was when I learned that 70%, or really at the time it was 80%, 75, 80, depends on what you read, were owned by mom and pop. So self-storage facilities, you drive around in Europe and Rochester, so you see probably a lot of Life Storage, right? So Life Storage used to be headquartered in Buffalo before they were bought by Extra Space. Um, you drive around, including my area, CubeSmart's down the street from me, their headquarters. So you see CubeSmart, Public, and Extra Space, and you think that's the self-storage world. They're not even 20% of all facilities. So that was what was so interesting to me, and that's how I ended up here talking to you. Did I is that too long? Not enough?
No, it was perfect. I mean, the reinvention of self is probably the most painful thing somebody can go through. And I've had multiple like severe losses in my, almost going on 19-year career in real estate, and it feels like the end of the world every time it happens. One book that I read that really, really changed my life was The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and there's a quote that stuck with me, and I still remember it, is that when you want something, the universe will secretly conspire for you to achieve it, in sometimes really mysterious ways. And I think also you have to look at, like, a lot of people that are investors that, they look at, like, 5-year T-bars, all right, of, cash inflows and cash outflows and that sort of thing. But I think that when you're a business owner, you kind of have to look at like the 30-year T-bar on that. And oh yeah, it is. And yeah, kind of a funny story is, I was talking in the green room. I just got back from Disney World, and one of the most impactful things in my life happened when I was on the monorail coming back from Magic Kingdom with my daughter. Just like she was just coming off of being sick as a dog. And there was this young kid sitting across the way from us, and he was wearing this Disney alumni, mouse ears sort of thing. And we kind of got into his life story, and this kid was, his lifelong dream was to become a Disney Imagineer, right? Working on the sets and that sort of thing for all the parks and, all the studios and that sort of thing. And so he decided, instead of going to Disney first out of high school, working for the 2-year stint, is he wanted to go to college first and major in set design and theater as a major. And then he applied to Disney. Guess what job he got when he applied out of there? Parking lots. At night, okay? The people that are doing the, the little signaling and that sort of thing. And those are one of the things, I could be like, my life is over. I this whole plan that I had, it was completely scrapped, right? But the way that he had his attitude was, and I'm sorry to go down the rabbit hole here, but I mean, obviously everything you just said, I mean, the mindset and attitude is so important to our success as business owners. He was like, hey, working at nights was great. It was cooler, right? I didn't have, my counterparts worked during the day, and, and I didn't have to, deal with the sun and that sort of thing. Plus, from my vantage point in the lot where I was stationed, I don't know if it was whether the heroes or the villains, that sort of thing, I got to see 2 fireworks shows every night from Magic Kingdom and Epcot. And it was his attitude, his positive attitude, just through kind of the alchemy of negative experiences and turning them into positivity, that he landed his dream job in creating sets and theater productions for high schools over a multi-county region, right? And he would have never expected that to happen. And I just think that that was an incredibly impactful story to me that I haven't really told it publicly yet, but I just wanted to get it on the record.
Yeah. I mean, and clearly he had a goal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that parking lot job was just a step on the way. I mean, and he's maintained the right attitude, right? The I'm going to get this attitude. And, that's awesome. What a great story. How old was he?
Oh, I think he was probably in his mid-20s or something like that. So, Joe, let's talk about your first big deal self-storage for you at the time. I want to get into the nitty-gritty of one of those deals that where you kind of earned your battle scars and what you learned. So let's talk about that deal as a case study today.
Yeah. So our first deal in self-storage was actually in Waldorf, Maryland, and it was kind of this deal that was discarded. Now, I wouldn't say. Well, we did earn some battle scars there, I guess. We bought a deal that it was owned by a bigger group. They discarded it. It was kind of the redheaded stepchild of their group. But to make it work, meaning to make the math work, to really grow the value of this facility, and we hadn't expected to do this. We expected to buy a facility, and this is kind of our playbook, is to buy a facility that's just not managed well, right? We look for mom and pop run facilities. This wasn't mom and pop run in that they were really bigger, sophisticated, wealthy commercial real estate guys. It was just kicked to the curb. So it was run like a mom and pop runs it, but it wasn't a mom and pop owned. I don't know if it's making sense, but what we look for in those types of facilities is, can we manage these better? Can we grow the revenue? Are they below market? The boxes we look for, if we want to be there, is, where are they rates? Are they full? Do they raise rates on their customers? What kind of market are we in, et cetera? Well, this one was checking some of those boxes, but not all of them. What we realized though is this was an older stock facility, and meaning it wasn't metal. It was like it was cinder block walls on the exterior, and then you had shingle roof, and then a lot of the walls in between were actually like studded drywalled walls, and the ceilings were drywall. So what we had to do was actually roll up our sleeves, and we figured out, we had our I don't know, getting in the weeds here, but we had, but it's relatable because it's operations. It's really, this is probably a success story. I've got some, mistakes we made, but this was one where my partner Tim went down, learned how to manage it. One of my partners, I should say, there were three of us. He actually was there 3 days a week, really learning how to manage. So operating, right? What I didn't do in the kitchen of the bar and restaurant, he did. So this is a success story. But what we learned was, hey, if we're going to really um, grow the value of this facility, we've got to look at what we have. So we had 10 by 10s, 5 by 10s, and we had where our vacancy was our 5 by 10s were these smaller units, and for whatever reason they weren't renting. So we had to go in and knock down walls and like tape and seam ceilings, and just to make them look clean and fresh on the inside. Knock down walls, take two 5 by 10s and make them a 10 by 10. Right? Even I had two doors, but so what? And so it was it was the lesson of going in there and look, you got to roll up your sleeves, got to get your hands dirty. Literally, got our hands dirty, and created units that we could actually market and rent. Um, I wish we had done that. If I know you're begging for me to tell I love your approach. Everybody always talks about success stories. Let's talk about where you failed and what you learned. I wish we had continued to have, not so much our next three facilities, but it was probably facility, and we've acquired 19 to this point. So it's probably facility number roughly 4, 5, and 6, or 5, 6, and 7, where we thought we had it figured out. We thought we had the formula. We thought we could just allow this third party person to manage these for us, and we took our eye off of that. And I was focused on growth as the CEO, right? And we had this, expert who was going to manage these facilities for us, and we could just literally turn my attention away from the kitchen, right? Where, and I've learned this lesson, and it cost me a lot of money, and here I am making the same mistake again. And we did. We made the mistake again on, well, for sure three, almost a fourth. Um, Two of the four are fine. Yeah, that's the beauty of storage, and one of the things that attracted me about storage is you manage it by the month. And actually, I skipped over that. Why storage for me? After multifamily and hotels, hotels you manage by the night. It's a nightly contract. Multifamily is an annual lease, right? It's an annual contract. Um, and also you're subject to landlord laws. So that was another thing. But storage you manage by the month. So in good times and bad, you can adjust what you're doing and how you're managing to you can adapt to market conditions so much faster and easier than you can in multifamily. And I'm not knocking multifamily. I invest in it. I just don't want to operate it. But at the same time, it's not a hotel where you're just, it's nonstop management and overhead, managing employees and overhead and all that stuff. So we're, even though we got into some trouble, we were able to manage ourselves out of those. But it was, my goodness, you feel, as I'm looking at you and saying this out loud, I feel like an idiot because we literally took our eye off the ball again. I took my head out of the kitchen and just trusted that someone that says they know what they're doing knows what they're doing. But the problem is they don't have the vested interest I do. So what they were doing was, you know, turned at the end of the day wrong and mailing it in and not paying attention to the climate that was changing. And it was changing. This was post COVID. Real estate transactions were dying. Interest rates were going up. And we're just coming out of that now, but it was a 2 year very difficult period in storage where the operators that survived were operators. They literally, you had to operate the hell out of these things. And thank God, actually, one of my new partners now, Don Herzog, came from Life Storage. He lives up in Buffalo. He was a bigwig up at Life Storage, but when they sold to Extra Space, he was one of the guys that got pushed out because duplicative roles, right? And so he joined us, and thank God came in and really brought that REIT mentality and management to our little boutique operation. So it really saved us in a lot of ways. But yeah, it was, I know you wanted to talk about, the mistakes that we've made and the hard life lessons. I'm embarrassed to say I had to learn it twice. But I mean, those are the facts, and we're better for it. We'll never do it again. I mean, every acquisition we make now, we 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 don't just consider it's operations is involved in the acquisitions, and I want to make sure this thing is going to be successful because we're raising money from investors, and we have a fiduciary responsibility not only to return their capital with a return, but if we're smart about it, we'd like them to reinvest with us, right? So it's not just fiduciary; it's kind of a common sense, no brainer. But and we like to make money too. So we don't make money unless they make money.
Oh, absolutely. Joe, let me stop you right there because I want to go like rewind the clock a little bit and kind of make a couple comments. Actually, it's a question. So, I'm just as a curiosity, when you took out this dividing wall, and I know that even in our market, 5x10s just definitely struggle because it's a glorified like walk-in closet. Did you get a premium for somebody having two doors? Because like I can have two access points to this thing.
um, at the time, we were so thrilled to just be able to lease them up because they weren't moving. No, we didn't. I'm trying to think at the end, we've sold that facility. We did a 1031 exchange into another one. I think towards the end, there might have been like a $5 a month premium on the two-door unit versus the one. You can only really do that if you're pretty highly occupied, right? Otherwise, you're just trying to get the occupancy up.
Yeah, it's a deluxe 10x10.
Right.
So they have it on.
Well, and interesting you bring that up because there's a lot of we call it dynamic pricing that's going on that the REITs really brought to us. Now there's software out that does it. So you'll see pricing for the, let's just stay with a 10x10. You'll see different prices for a 10x10 in the same facility. Why is that? Well, one's at the back or one's closer to the front gate, one or one's around a quarter that's it's an odd corner in the so you are starting to see this. So it's a great question. That a two-door premium for sure. That's believe me, everyone in storage is looking for an angle to try to get it.
Yeah. Plus, and it's like we have multifamily, we operate multifamily, and to combine two units into one. I mean, like think about the hurdles you have to go through. You have to get zoning approval for it. All right. Because you're potentially increasing density, for instance. You got to get building code because you're technically, having like a pseudo change of use. And, that's the one thing that I do like about, I mean, we've kind of transitioned out of multifamily into other commercial asset classes because one, like getting a building permit for a build out for an office tenant is like, it takes like, days as opposed to months for adding a unit, for instance. So you can definitely adapt a lot easier with alternative commercial asset classes. And then also, on the commercial asset classes, including self-storage, I mean, the reason why I don't invest in self-storage, I just don't have a passion for it, but I'm always curious when I bring on self-storage operators, is like the expense ratio on self-storage is so much lower than the other ones. And then also, multifamily, I'd say, maybe hospitality has the highest expense ratio, but, multifamily is a pretty high expense ratio. So you don't have like a lot of room to go when you're looking to, there's certain expenses that are just like, you can't do anything about them, for instance. So that's kind of what led me to the commercial side of things. So now backing up a little bit, what was the origin of this deal that we're talking about for the case study? And did it just land in your lap, or were you out there like banging phones? Or tell me about that.
Yeah. So most of our deals we find we have a team of VAs, and we know where all the storage facilities are, and we filter out all the Publix and CubeSmarts and Extra Space, and institutionally owned names that you wouldn't recognize. And then we have VAs constantly calling them to seeing if they're ready to retire, type of thing, ready to sell. This particular first one, um, my partner Tim went to he went to a self storage association. I think it was, so we have two industries, two big conferences, SSA and ISS. Self storage associations, one of them. And I think it was that one had a executive ski workshop in Park City, and I think it was Deer Valley. It's a boondoggle. So he went on this boondoggle and ended up cozying up at the bar next to the broker who had the listing, and it had just fallen through, the buyer. So it was a pocket listing, wasn't even listed anymore. So just networking. And that's what I teach self storage to folks through Scott Myers Academy. And first thing I tell them is tell everybody what you're doing. Put it on LinkedIn, put it on Facebook, tell everybody you're in self storage. You just never know where the deals are coming from. And everybody knows I'm in self storage. I've been for 6 years, and I get emails and phone calls. Most of them don't work out, but you just never know. But yeah, I think I'm assuming you want to know how we find traditionally our deals, and we see. I'll get on any given day, I'll get 5 to 10 listed deals through brokers in my inbox. Of if we bought 19, I think only 2 or 3 have come actually listed from brokers. They're mostly off market, and that particular one was just having a beer at the bar.
Yeah. So on these listed properties you get emailed by brokers, do you respond to each one of them with feedback, even on doing like a quick like heads or tails of it and saying like, hey, this is not my cup of tea, or like what's your methodology for working the broker relationships? And then second part of the question is like, what is the talk track for the VAs? A lot of times like people may think like, oh, bigger deals, bigger competition. In my experience, like I own quite a bit of real estate, commercial real estate, and I don't get any phone calls ever. I feel kind of lonely sometimes because nobody wants my stuff. But kind of tell me about those two sort of like deal channels through brokers and direct to sellers, and how you work that. Let's get tactical here.
Yeah. So brokers, real simple. We don't owe them anything. They're blasting it out to 5,000, 10,000 potential buyers. I can't imagine what their response inboxes look like, because I'm sure people ask questions. We look at the deals. We have a very quick way of analyzing whether or not it's a deal for us or not. And if it is a deal we have interest in, then we're getting back to them with feedback or asking questions. Some of them are really proactive. If you download the OM, it triggers something on their end, and next thing they're calling you, hey, what kind of questions do you have? I'm like, I haven't even looked at it yet. So no, we don't owe them anything. Talk track our VAs. So what I teach people to do, and what we try to communicate with our VAs is, look, and this is true of the self storage industry. We're calling mom and pop owned facilities, right? They might manage it themselves. They usually do. They get bombarded with phone calls, letters, postcards. Not so much people dropping by and visiting, but sometimes. So and I'm sorry for you that nobody bombards you. Although trust me, you're better off that way, because we own facilities, and they call ours, and they send letters, and so we know what it's like on the other side too. Um, what I teach people to do is, look, the at the end of the day, especially with mom and pop, this is a relationship business. A lot of times this was their baby. Maybe they built it. Maybe they just owned it for 20 years and expanded it, but it's been their baby. And they want to do business typically with someone, not all the time, but a lot of times you can tell they want to like who they're selling it to. So how does what I just said go through a VA to, who's not me, to the seller? It's hard. It's challenging. So a lot of times it's just being persistent and finding them, catching them on the right day, the right time. But we try to work with our VAs and explain that to them. Like, look, these people get a lot of calls. You can't just call them like, hi, you can't sound like a robot. we'd like to buy your facility or whatever stupid thing that the junior brokers that are just in the boiler rooms, making 100 calls a day are doing. We can't sound like that. We have to be personal, and I try to tell them to look at the facility first. I look at every facility on Google before I buy or before I call, if I'm going to call, even if it's a warm call for me, because they're trying to tee up a warm call for me. So even before I call the facility, I want to know. I don't want to just call a guy blind, like like I don't know anything about his facility. I want to call as an example with with a warm intro. Hey, um, Matt, I see you have a facility. Thanks for taking the call. Based on my notes, you may or may not be interested in selling. Can I first just compliment you on the facility you have here? I was looking at from the satellite image, I can see whatever. I'll pick something out about it and compliment them because everyone likes to be complimented. And again, I'm talking. It's like, you have a 4.5-year-old daughter, right? You said if I was calling you, not that I'm trying to buy your daughter, but if I was calling you about your daughter, I'd say, "Oh, I love the bow she's wearing." Something like that, right? Where it's, "Oh, thanks," or "Your daughter's so sweet." You want to hear that. You as a parent want to hear how nice your kids are, right? Or how cute they are, right? So that I try to take that and infuse that into the storage facility component of it. So I'm trying to compliment or say something nice. Maybe it's about the area or whatever, and then that typically is now warm and guards are down, and we try to have the conversation from there. The VA has to try to achieve that same level somehow. There has to find some common bond, some ground. It's hard. It's not easy. It's hard.
Yeah, no, I think that like those people that are first starting out too, I mean, have a really, really great competitive advantage in using the low tech way of building relationships. Because as we've grown, we've leaned on technology more and more. And the more we lean on technology, the more that we have to scale our outreach because, our efficacy per touch point is going to naturally go down. But I remember when I was out there, like, driving for dollars, looking at deals and having that personal touch. I mean, I had, a pretty decent conversion factor compared to what we're doing now, which is a more scale.
Can I cut you off? You driving for dollars. You were there in person. That goes a long way. You have to be a human being. This is a human to human interaction, right? That driving for dollars. By the way, when I go to a facility to go see it, if we have a successful conversation, looks like we're going to make a deal, we go down and see it. In fact, my partner Tim is down looking at a deal right now, doing the inspection on it. He's driving for dollars every other facility in the area within 10 miles. He's going to walk on lots and he's going to shake hands, and we'll have success at some point in the future from them because you might not be a seller today of your facility, but you're 68 years old. You might be in the next 5 years, right? So it's the driving for dollars. It's that human to human. And to your point, technology has broadened what we can do geographically, but it's narrowed the scope to how we can interact as humans, right? To a telephone call.
Yeah, I mean, it's like moral of the story is like don't get intimidated by like guys like Joe and I that use VAs and complicated super complex like CRM systems, that sort of thing. Like, and you don't need any of that. Like you have some a leg up on us. So let's talk about the financing of this deal. Like, how did you put the capital stack together?
So in the first deal, we're big believers of we put up our own money first before we went to friends and family, et cetera. But I'll tell you about just how we do it now. That's like, for instance, the deal that Tim is down is in Tallapoosa, Georgia. It's under contract. We'll be raising money for that in a couple weeks. That capital stack will be, I think it's 65 or 70% LTV. I forget off the top of my head. And actually, it's a seller finance deal, so the seller's holding the paper for us, which is, we love those. And we'll raise like $1 million. Tim's down. The part of the reason he's down there for the property inspection, but also to see what the capex budget's going to be. So we'll be anywhere from 50 grand to 200 grand. We don't do a lot of capex typically. We're not changing out Formica countertops for granite, type of thing. A lot of what the value we create in storage you don't see. It's on paper. It's in management, but we do things like we want to make sure it's fenced. that is secure, that we've got lights everywhere, security cameras everywhere. And that's one of the other big things we do with facilities is, the mom and pop traditionally, if they have a website, a lot of times it's from the MySpace era. It's not functional. When we're done with Tallapoosa, which is very much like what I just described, you'll be able to find it on your cell phone, rent a unit on your cell phone, auto pay on your cell phone, insurance on your cell phone. And then, the way they're building them today, new facilities today, it doesn't make sense to retroactively do this, but you new facilities, you'll access the gate from your cell phone, Bluetooth, and now we have the mag locks, excuse me. So now your phone will also open your unit. But the capital stack will be 65, 70 debt, and then the balance of that will be roughly $1 million will be equity from investors, and we put deals out at usually like healthy double digit returns, low to mid teens. Usually, I think this one will probably be mid teens.
Mm-hmm. So, Joe, on the capital raising space from raising capital, I mean, you've probably a lot better at it now than you were when you first, started doing this. So this is like after the bar days, right? So I guess like, how did you do it from the first time you had to do it, and then what were the mistakes you made, and what do you do now? Now that you've learned those mistakes.
So I don't know if they're mistakes. They're just the way we structure them are differently. It's a mistake. It was an early mistake the way we structured one very successful deal because we did well. Everybody did well. We would have done better if we'd structured it the way we do it today. And the way we do, and that's doesn't sound good the way I just said that, right? Nobody wants to hear the sponsor would make more money. But what we do now is we align our interests better. So we did well in that deal, but had we not done as well, our downside was protected more, if that makes sense, than the investors. So now we have a hurdle rate. So we really align ourselves with our investors. So, and that's helped us raise capital too. So, we 80% of the profit goes to our investors until a hurdle rate, and then it flips to us. So we don't make a lot of money until our investors have their capital back and hit a return that we all agreed on going in. So I don't want to say it was a mistake the way we did it before because everybody did well, but if but that deal did really well. If the deal did marginally okay, which can happen, we still would have done pretty well, and our investors would have done okay. So now, if it's a marginal deal, our investors will do okay, and we, hopefully we do okay, right? So we just realign the interest better for investors.
Yeah, or you make 50 cents.
There's
Yeah,
deals where we don't make any money. Yeah,
yeah.
there's gonna be a few deals
I,
where we don't make money.
I think that one of the things that on the balancing between stakeholder interests as well. If I'm ever going into a deal, sometimes I have partners, and we don't do any SEC regulated like syndication stuff here. We're doing like joint ventures, small ownership groups, and sometimes we have people that bring us deals that are like. I like look at it. I'm like, dude, you're gonna make 50 cents like in this whole thing. Like I need, especially if you're gonna have an ongoing involvement with the deal, like I need everybody to be interested. And thinking that it's worth their while, because the moment you have a partner, it's just like a contractor you hire, right? If the contractor, once they realize they're not making money on a job, like they're either going to like cut so many corners that it's going to be a complete abortion, or they're just going to walk off the job and disappear and never come back again. There's a kind of like a fine balance with that. And I think that, whenever I'm passively investing in deals too, I want to make sure that the sponsor is like got enough to keep them interested as well. So let's talk about like, sort of the spheres, right? So that there's the kind of like the marketing sphere of like, being known, all right, being known for a certain thing or subject matter, and then taking those contacts that are from out there and converting them into an actual, like an investor that strokes you a check, for instance. Like, tell me about kind of that process in order operations, what your methodology is on that front.
So you're talking about having the credibility to ask for a check? Am I reading that question right?
Maybe let me rephrase this. So it's like, okay, so you have an ever growing need to grow your sphere. So how do you do that? How do you do that? I mean, I guess one, you're on a podcast, right? So you came on a podcast, and then how to turn those people in that audience into an actual an investor that writes a check and invests with you alongside on a deal.
Yeah, great question, actually. Now I understand. So, you start out your own money, friends and family, because they believe in you and they believe in your thesis. And we had already demonstrated it with one deal, but eventually you run out of your own money, right? And your friends and family, they're allowed to get tapped out too. Um, and so you take to marketing, which is what we've been doing for a couple of years now. Certainly, podcasts have been fantastic. We also put out marketing pieces, but I think one of the strategic things we did in the last 9 months to a year, and it's really starting to gain traction now, is we recognize, especially me teaching people how to buy storage, what I've recognized, and I'm on the front lines with these folks who are just learning, is there's a lot of people that will invest passively and only want to invest passively. But I'd say if I meet 10 people, five want to invest passively, and five have said, yeah, this is great, but I want to do this too. How can you help me buy it? So I'll do this, you'll air this podcast. And if I get 10 calls, five people will say, hey, I'd love to invest. I heard your podcast, love to invest with you guys. Great. Love them. I'll get five people that call me and say, hey, I've got an idea. I've got a piece of land. I've got a piece, or there's a facility nearby that I think the guy wants to sell it. I want to buy it. What do I do? So when we first started, I couldn't help you. I'm trying to convert your active brain and desire into a passive investment. It just doesn't work, right? So, and you can't be all things to all people. But what we realized was, look, we've built this nice um, pipeline of deals. We've got a pretty good engine. We can analyze them quickly. Because of our capital stacks, we can't buy every deal anyway because we've got to hit these 15 IRR hurdles, typically. So not every deal either pencils because I got to pay investors or is worth it because I have to pay investors, right? I can't buy a $700,000 deal and make you money and me money and tie up my staff because it takes the same amount of time to buy a $700,000 deal as it does a $3 million deal, right? And I can make money on the $3 million deal, but I can't make any money on the $700,000 deal. But it's a good deal, right? It checks all the boxes. Everything is there. It's just that my capital stack doesn't work. So what we've done is started consulting. So we say now I can field all 10 calls, and I'm not trying to put you anywhere. So this is who we are. This is what we do. If you want us to help you find you a deal, we'll find you a deal. Great. You win, we win. If you just want to learn how we do it, that's great. And invest passively, wonderful. You win, we win. So that by putting our marketing speaks to that. Thank you for asking that question. So allow me to actually explain that. Um, because that's who we are today. That's what we're doing. We love storage. We're passionate about it. We built a nice pipeline and engine. We can evaluate deals quickly. We can either help people or we can, we're happy to have you in our investor database and continue to look at deals and invest in deals if you like the deals we put out.
Absolutely. So, Joe, before we get into how our listeners can get in touch with you and get into your ecosystem, you've been very generous with your time, but parting words of advice for our listeners out there that maybe own a couple investment properties, want to scale into doing deals that are significantly more impactful on helping them achieve their financial goals as an active investor. What action steps can they take like today, this week, this month to put them in that direction to position them to scale?
In any business or self-storage?
In any real estate vertical.
Well, my first advice is keep your head in the kitchen. As I've explained, I've had to learn that twice now, and I'll never forget it because the second one is costing me more than $100,000. But we take care of our investors. So, keep your head in the kitchen. I think, how you said early on, and I love the way you phrase this, the 5-year T-bill versus the 30-year. I think you have to take stock of where you are. So if you're a single family home buyer, rehabber, renter guy, um, that's great. A lot of people make a lot of money there, and if that's the path you're on, ask yourself. And by the way, I talk to the self storage folks about this too. The people learning that I'm teaching. So you have to decide where you want to be in 5 years, and that's hard to do today. But where do you want to be in 5 years and 10 years? What does this look like for you? Because that's going what you buy in self storage, what you're looking at to buy will differ depending on how you want to be in 5 years. Do you want to be like Belrose Storage Group and have a staff and overhead and be putting out deals and raising money, or do you just want to own one or two? And it's just you, and you have no investors, and you have no one to answer to, and that's true if you're in single family rental or flips or you're buying office buildings or what do you where do you see this operation in 5 years or 10 years, and is that what you want it to look like? And if it's if I've got 10 single family rentals and the path I'm on is taking me to 30 in 5 years, is that what does that look like? Is that what I want? Right. And if not, do I need to start pivoting today? And if it is, do I need to start building what my infrastructure today? Do I need to start putting systems in place such that I can manage 30 single families in 5 years by myself? Or is it outsource management? It's thinking ahead. And that's a lesson we learned actually, because when we started buying storage facilities, I don't think we even had the ambition to own 19. I think we thought we'd own 3, 4, 5 at a time. Not, and we don't own 19 now, we own 13 or 14, but it was a jump in overhead to be able to manage it all. So that would be my advice is keep your head in the kitchen and constantly have that 5 to 10 year horizon on what is this thing going to look like if I'm successful, right? Because we're only here because we're successful. If you got 10 deals and you're successful at acquiring 30, you don't want to wake up and look around and go, holy shit, my life's a mess. I'm trying to manage 30 facilities and I got 2 kids and trying to go to Disney World and you got tenants calling me. You know what I mean? You have to plan for that and visualize what that's going to look like and start setting yourself up for that today.
Absolutely. Joe, how can our listeners get in touch with you? And we can definitely, and we'll put all that in the show notes.
Oh, wonderful. Best way for me is just email. I'm joe@belroseam.com. So that's one L in Belrose. It's BELROSE and then A as an asset, M as in management.com. And love to field any emails if you're interested in getting into storage in however you want to get into storage. I'm agnostic. We're here to help. Love it. We're passionate about it. We're not going anywhere.
Excellent. Joe, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.